And indeed, the live stream starts now. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Full Course Yellow. This is In Pit Lane's weekly chat, get-together, whatever you want to call it. Bitch session, expression session, call it what you like. This is what it is. It's every Thursday night at 9 o'clock in the old time slot of In Pit Lane, of course, because we have a new time slot now, and that time slot is Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock. Now, coming up this week, well, there's lots happened on the weekend, an awful lot to happen, and just some of the people to talk about it as we wait for the fashionably late Dave Stillwell to join us, and he has indeed joined us right now, and we'll just introduce the panel to you once again. We've got Pete, we've got Doc, we've got Dave, and we've got Chris. Chris Stewart is on the injured list tonight. But we do have a substitute coming in off the interchange bench a little bit later on. We'll be joined by the voice of Sky Formula One and the international feed. David Croft will be hearing from David Croft a little bit later on in the program. I had the opportunity to catch up with David a little bit earlier. We were supposed to have about, they said we could give you 5 or so minutes, and as you will hear in his answer to one of the questions, he himself sort of pointed out that the interview had gone on just a little bit longer than was originally planned, and I can tell you that it went on a lot longer after that as well. So,
so he's not joining us live. I thought he was with us live tonight.
No. Unfortunately, I think he's a little bit busy today over in Saudi Arabia.
And it's still some ungodly hour.
Yes, it was.
It's good to hear from him anyway.
It's daytime there, yes, but we'll catch up with him as we talk about it, because he's got some interesting things to say. Incidentally,
Stilly, I think, building a chair. You're getting a lot of background noise there. We might want to mute Stilly.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Dave's doing at the moment. There we are. But anyway, he will join us a little bit later on in the program, and we've got some other regulars joining us. Mad Cow Mark is joining us once again. Box. Also joining us again. Tony P is joining us. Good to see you. Dave Howard also joining us as well. Good evening to you, David. And of course, Russell Clark is joining us as well. If you'd like to join us, well, come along. Send us a message. Tell us that you're watching. We'd love to speak with you. But anyway, let's talk about.
Pour a drink and join us.
Yes, pour a drink, and that's probably not should have done that myself, actually. I literally just finished tea. I just woofed down something quickly, and I made some noodles, and I was a little bit heavy on the Szechuan pepper, so at the moment I've got a very, very numb tongue.
You're always heavy on the spice, but that's all right. You wear it.
I know it, but the thing with Szechuan pepper is it's not hot. It's just numbing, But anyway, let's go. Let's go.
That's all right. That's all right, Brett. We'll be sure to be quite complimentary to you this evening.
Oh, that's the Dave Stillwell drinking game. There's your first one for the night.
What are you saying? The assault of puns has started, has it?
And there's 2. There you go. We're gonna have to get a little ticker in the corner, sort of bing every time we get a bad pun from Dave. The Dave Stillwell punner-meter.
Oh, I caught the grandpa jokes as well too. Yeah.
But anyway, as we said over the weekend, Formula One return. It was so busy on the weekend. We had did the news on Monday night for this week's show, where we had Barry Rogers as our guest, and we had so much of Barry Rogers that we didn't want to sort of lose, that we had a very quick news. So I had to drop things like Sebring, both Sebrings, a whole bunch of other things, but we might talk about some of that tonight. But let's start with Formula One, because it was it was an interesting new look, an interesting winner. Pete, you're our resident Formula One tragic. What did you think of the race, and what did you think of the performance by Ferrari? Did that surprise you?
The performance by all the Ferrari engines surprised me. All the Ferrari engines cars surprised me. But it was a good race. There was a lull in the middle. I'm a bit apprehensive that we might get an intra-team battle for the championship rather than an inter-team, which would be better to get an inter-team battle rather than an intra-team. But it was a good race. There was a lot more overtaking, and Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc were having quite a battle there for a little while.
The interesting thing the battle between Max and Max and Charles was interesting. I mean, the fact that he came back so quickly, so it looks like the regulations may have changed things. It's interesting that the report from the drivers was sort of mixed. I mean, some said, yeah, look, it's made a huge difference. Others are saying, yeah, not so much. Fernando Alonso has sort of said, yeah, look, it's made a bit of it, but it's introduced other problems, and it's much of a muchness, and it's still too hard to pass once you get up close. So, but it's certainly the racing at the front was, but yeah, until the Red Bulls had their problems, their fuel problems, was absolutely sensational between the Ferrari and Max Verstappen. So, hopefully that continues.
A man who had a vested interest is Ross Brawn, and I saw a couple of quotes from him. He said there was no negatives, and that what was the other one as well, though, too? Particularly midfield, he said the racing was closer and there was more passing opportunities. So maybe the drivers were just working on their confidence levels to try and make that happen. Because as I said, the wash is supposed to be better behind the cars. So. But yeah, it'll work itself out. There's different circuits. I mean, Alpine also come out and said this week as well too that they don't have too many developments for this weekend's race, which we'll go further on in a minute. We'll just keep reviewing for a sec, and that they are going to bring out a few extra upgrades for the Australian Grand Prix. That's where they're aiming from that point onwards. So, and then if you Alan Jones weighed in on Daniel Ricciardo's comments as well too, following from the weekend. Alan was pretty critical of Daniel. Did anyone see Daniel's comments?
I saw Daniel's comments. I haven't seen AJ's comments.
Well, Daniel's just to reiterate Daniel's comments for those who haven't heard, that he said because of obviously his COVID testing and no testing positive to that, and very little car time and also testing time, and a bit of a bad lead up towards the race. It was basically when he went out, he was just testing the car. It wasn't he wasn't giving it didn't think he'd give it the full tilt himself. So it was all installation time for himself basically. So Alan Jones came out and said, "What a load of BS, and stop making excuses, and you should have just gone for it."
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it was a really bad weekend for McLaren as a whole, and Daniel, in fact, finished ahead of Lando Norris. But it was interesting, and one of the things when I spoke with David Croft a little bit earlier, we spoke about the situation with McLaren and Daniel Ricciardo, and I did ask Crofty about whether he was surprised or not about the form from McLaren.
Yeah, I was very surprised. I knew that they obviously have problems with the brake ducts and the cooling and the brakes that were overheating, and I knew that was quite severe during the test. An interim fix was found, but it wasn't a fix that satisfied Andreas Seidel or the rest of his team. But I don't just think it's the brake ducts with McLaren. I think there's something else with that car that they need to be sorting out. And when you add into the equation the fact that Daniel Ricciardo was a bit undercooked, a bit underprepared, hardly surprising given that he missed the Bahrain test and he was recovering from COVID. It just all added up to another Bahrain Grand Prix that McLaren would want to forget, and that's not great given the investment that has been put into that team coming from Bahrain over the last few years. It's not the work of a moment to put these cars right and to fix these cars. The cost cap obviously has an influence with that because you just can't go and spend in Formula One anymore. You've got a limit. You've got a budget limit. But I was talking to some aerodynamicists before the start of the season. They said, look, in the past, if something was wrong on the car, we could fix it with a winglet here, a turning vane there. We could remodify the front wing a little bit. You can't do that now. So everything has to take that little bit longer to understand the problem, identify it, understand it, and then work out a fix. not until at least Imola am I expecting to see a massive performance change in any of the teams that were struggling. And McLaren could take a bit longer, because some of the faces I saw on Sunday night, they really were very down about it.
What about, you mentioned Dan Ricardo, then obviously, I mean, he's our hometown, well, not hometown, but home country hero here in Australia. There's been some talk in the local media from some saying that this is really a make or break year for Daniel. I mean, with the tidal wave of young talent that's coming through Formula 2, including another Australia in young Oscar Piastri. I mean, what's the situation with Daniel? Do you think that's overstating it, that his position might be in jeopardy if he doesn't perform well this year?
Yeah, I think it's overstating it to a touch, but McLaren have brought him in on a decent wage to perform and to bring results. Now, he did bring a result last year. He did get a win, and the team had a 1-2, and they were the only team that got a 1-2 finish last season. But overall, it's been more races that Daniel's been disappointed in than he has reason to smile when he's been at McLaren. It should be a perfect fit. You know, it should be going swimmingly and smoothly, but for some reason, his teammate Lando Norris seems to be able to extract more out of that car than Daniel. Now, Lando's grown up in the McLaren stable, and maybe, you know, that the car last year was more to his liking. I don't think we can judge whether either driver likes this year's car or not, because it's too soon in the season. But Daniel's got a real fight on his hands, because Lando's good and talented, and arguably could have won a race himself last year. Had he not have stayed out when it was raining in Sochi, he would have done. So, is it overstating it? Yes. Is Daniel Ricciardo in trouble? No. Does he need to improve? Yes. Is he falling below the standards he sets himself and McLaren set him? Probably. And I think that's the key. He will want to do better for himself, because he sets such high standards. But I don't expect to see Daniel Ricciardo out of Formula One in the near future. He is, after all, a 7-time race winner, and you know, a man that on his day thrills, delights, entertains, and succeeds.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting point that he made about the changes in the rules have made it very different, because you can't just any solution you have now is not going to be sort of, you know, tacking on a little bit of wing here and there. I mean, it's basically a whole car design thing, because they're not allowed to put on all of those different, you know, tuning vanes and barge boards and all the stuff that they have in the past. So how?
Well, it's not just that sequence, Brett. The biggest point he made was back at the start, where you're talking about, is that it's the 100 million cap on them, and they're all stuck on it now. So they can't go. The big three teams can't go and throw money at it now, and the other teams have got more of an opportunity to even the playing field.
But it's the smaller teams that, you know, like nobody can throw money at it, and they're all sort of probably up and around the cap already.
It's 100 million, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's going to be very difficult if somebody designs a genuinely bad car. Let's just say that the McLaren is, you know, the fundamental design of the McLaren is wrong, that they've got it basically wrong from the start. Is there going to be an opportunity during the course of the year to make it the major changes that they want to make in order to make that thing competitive again, or do they just almost have to write off the year already?
Well, still his nose just said no, because he just shaked it either side.
It's Crofty's basically alluding to there's such a change to the fundamental, you know, way in which a Formula One car is designed, in terms of where you can and can't, you know, direct air over the monocoque. I think what he's alluding to is that McLaren needs to understand, is this an issue with a small part of the car that can be unbolted, detached, and rebuilt? But if there's a problem with the fundamental philosophy that they've gone about designing the car, you know, that's not the work of a moment, and there may not even be scope within the season and the budget constraint they have. Because remember, that's not just a development budget, that's everything. That's running the cars. I think it excludes like your top 3 performance-related personnel and your drivers. It excludes marketing and media activities. So all of the, you know, floating, you know, party houses and, dancing people in cages and podiums and flashing disco lights, all of that's unrestricted. Because otherwise, why would Red Bull be in the sport? But all of the performance-related staffing is all heavily restricted. So, going into not pre-season testing, it was the shakedown in Barcelona. McLaren looked really positive, and it looked like they were on for a good run. And then we come to Bahrain with an update to try and fix some brake cooling issues, and that really didn't fix the car. A lot of the teams are struggling. We're on a new fuel setup this year with 10% bioethanol, what we'd normally call E10 in Australia. That's made a fundamental change to how the fuel reacts through the course of a race as it gets hot. It's thought to be the likely cause of the issues that the Red Bull powertrain car suffered. But looks like maybe Haas spending all of last year not developing their car was a good idea, and McLaren spending a lot of last year developing their current cars to win a race at Monza. You've got to rob Peter to pay Paul, and we're seeing the outcome of that this year.
And that was a surprise. Sorry.
Let's go ahead, Pete.
That was a surprise. The other surprise at Bahrain was Haas, because I thought they'd be hamstrung because they had the trouble with their sponsor. So I thought they'd be quite hamstrung, but they're not.
They've already got the money, which is one of the things that Dmitry Mazepin is going after the team. Putting aside the fact that the country of whose leader he is closely associated with and has derived a vast quantity of wealth from exporting the natural resources of the Russian Federation, the fact that company's not allowed to be involved anywhere basically in the Western world now, and the Russian athletes aren't allowed to be Russian athletes anymore. They'd already got the money up front, and now he's starting the court action because he wants his money back because they cancelled the sponsorship contract. How great was it to see, Kevin Magnussen come back at short notice? He'd been tapped on the shoulder to, jump into the Peugeot hypercar program. And that's obviously not really kicking off in 2022 so far. Obviously, all eyes on the 100th running of Le Mans next year at the Circuit de Sarthe. He might be back in a Peugeot for that one. It would just appear that Ferrari powertrains have done a whole lot of development in the off season. They've locked that one in. Was it 5 out of the top 10 were Ferrari powertrain, and 6th was in P11 was Mick Schumacher. That's not the work of a moment. Haas, of course, utilizes the Ferrari wind tunnel, has their tub made for them by Dallara, but they use a substantial amount of Ferrari IP as they're allowed to under the rules in the back end of the car. I'd say that certainly worked wonders for them. It would just appear that McLaren, for whatever reason, and again, we're making this judgment based off one circuit that has a very specific layout. Next week we go to Jeddah, which, if we saw last year, massively different type of circuit. It's a permanent circuit, but it's like a street circuit, and it's got some of those elements that we see at Monza and at Baku in Azerbaijan, where a car that is, shall we say, doesn't have the out-and-out downforce performance, but it's very slippery in a straight line, can be very competitive. And if we think back to 2021, where was McLaren most competitive? Monza. So, maybe they've just, slid their sliders a little bit too far one way to be competitive, or put in a good showing at every track. And, they'll put in a good showing at the fast tracks, but then at somewhere, like an intermediate track like Bahrain, they'll be nowhere.
Speaking of Bahrain, I love your little note just below there, Brett. You've said you mentioned Bahrain. You spelt it the opposite. We're backwards of each other, and it's funny actually. You'll see it down there in the lower thirds flying by in a minute. You put the H and the R around the other way, and then highlight it.
I was tempted to spin on McLaren's wheel covers. I was tempted to spin for a Ken Morgan Toyota. They look like that.
There's a reference for our older viewers, that's for sure. I didn't think you were quite that old, Pete.
hey, it's Thursday. So down the bottom there now, safety car rules review after Bahrain mix-up. So you've mixed up the Bahrain exactly.
Oh, there you go. Well,
you set yourself
Doc,
up to mix up.
That's the joke.
That's what I said, mix up.
No, that's a mistake. That's what that is. Incidentally, yeah, it was interesting that the performance by Haas. I mean, they basically said that they were, as Dave was saying, that they were sacrificed last year to really concentrate on getting a car prepared for the new regulations this year, and certainly that was that
they
seems
summed
to
it
have
up
paid
pretty well
off.
too. Outright, they just went for outright speed as well too. So
Well, they were very lucky. I mean, in a way, they've been very fortunate. I mean, with the whole with the whole unfortunate situation, is that I mean, it has meant that they've got rid of a millstone around their neck in terms of a driving talent, and they've got someone now that they can put into the car in Magnussen, who can drive a bit and who is going to get more out of that car and be a better sort of touchstone and sounding board for Mick Schumacher as well. Another team that had that philosophy was Williams, of course. And they were going in with huge anticipation that they were going to have a much better year. But it's looking like after the results of the weekend that it might be more of the same for the new look Williams.
As far as Magnussen goes, have a quick look at his interview that they did pre-race. I think it might have been after some practice 1 and practice 2. It was a really good interview where they had a chat to him about, you've suddenly found yourself here. What's been happening in the last couple of weeks? How did you get here? How have you found the car so far? And he was very relaxed and very upbeat and just said, look, I'm just going to do the best I possibly can. A few days ago, I was on holiday with the family and suddenly I've got the call up. I was sunning myself out on the beach there, just kicking back and relaxing. And the next thing I'm back in a thing. And I think one of the questions that was pertinent, they asked him, how long has it taken you to accustom to get used to the car again? He said, well, I've only been out of it a short time, a year or two. He said, I just, within a few minutes, he said, I was basically just learn all the slightly different alterations in front of me. And I picked up on it immediately. He said I was able to start going for it and challenging myself in the car pretty much off the get-go. So it's obviously the in-car cockpit, even though we've had all these cosmetic changes from the outside and the teams are always having new development and concepts. When it comes to just sitting in the chair and driving the thing and flicking a few switches, it was testament from Mr. Magnussen to say it's pretty much still status quo.
Yeah, and Andrew, yes, a solid start for you for the tip of Leclerc and Ferrari to win. So I hope you got a bet on, because the odds will have gone down a bit after that first performance. So
just a quick one for everyone. How did you think the new guy? Was it Zhou? Is it
Zhou? Yeah,
Zhou. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Thank you for correcting me there, Stilly. Top 10 finish, good effort.
Yeah, I think he did fair. First time out, I think he did very well. He's a very talented driver. I mean, he finished second. He finished second to Piastri in Formula 2. I mean, even though there's an awful lot of Chinese money behind him, which has got him the seat, it's not sort of a situation like a Mazepin, which is where he really hasn't earned it. You have to say that he took it right down. He took it right up to Oscar, right through until to pretty much the last round. So he's a very talented driver, and it will be good for the sport. Certainly over there if he gets the opportunity to be competitive, because there's no Chinese Grand Prix at the moment, and probably won't be for the next couple of years at least. But it would certainly be a big boost potentially for the sport if they have a Chinese driver there. I remember when we went to Ordos many years ago, spoke to a lot of Chinese media over there, and there was one guy. I'm sorry, I forgot his name now, but we had him on the show. He was sort of the David Croft of Chinese television, and he said everyone was fascinated. He said people were growing fascinated with motorsport and Formula One in particular, but he said the one thing that's missing, he said the one ingredient it needs to really take off as a sport is, he said, we need a Chinese driver, and that Chinese driver needs to be successful. So if that's the case, I mean, that would be a really good thing in the long run in terms of the
Mr.
money.
Fernando, anyone who finishes right behind Fernando Alonso is doing all right, and Tsunoda was just in front of him, so it wasn't. It's quite. The order just slightly was a bit mixed up. Let's see if it stays that way when we get to over to Saudi Arabia.
Incidentally, we had when we heard from David Croft before. You might be wondering now the full interview with Dave. Well, not the full interview. The full interview will go up on the YouTube channel. We're not going to have time to put the full interview up on Channel 31 but that's coming up on the Tuesday of the Grand Prix week. Ironically, the same night that David is out doing his show Ask Crofty. So if you want to ask, you can watch me ask David Croft questions on Channel 31, but if you'd like to ask David your own questions, then you can find out more about that. It's at the plenary at the Melbourne Convention Centre. Tickets are Ticket Tech, I think, started about $65. Not just David Croft, but also Martin Brundle alongside as well. And once again, I asked David about the concept of Ask Crofty, where it came from, and how he enjoys doing it.
Well, we used to run a segment after every race. We'd do a hashtag Ask Crofty, and people could ask questions. And I used to really enjoy it, actually. As you gathered from the 15 minutes and 25 seconds we've been on air so far, I like to talk.
Looks like we might have
so it was nice to interact, but 140 characters was quite limiting. And I was having a chat at the Australian Grand Prix. When was it? 2018, I think it was. To Wendy and Phil Brockbank, who Wendy runs the F1 Experiences agency in Australia, and runs it very well indeed. And they said, why don't you do a live stage show, an Ask Crofty stage show? I'm like, no, I couldn't do that. Me on stage, who wants to hear that? They went, oh God, loads of people. We'd sell out easily. So we ran a show in Perth in 2019. Because I rather like Perth, and I do rather like going down to Margaret River as well. So I use it as a really good excuse to pop down to Margaret River for a couple of days. And we sold out really quickly, and we had a full theatre, and it was a really enjoyable night. So sadly, 2020 and 2021, we couldn't go back to Australia, and we got talking, and we got talking and made some ambitious plans, which has ended up with TEG Live coming on board as well. I'm going to do three shows now in Perth because of the audience restrictions in Perth. We've had to swap things around a bit. It's 50% capacity allowed, so I've put an extra show on so that everyone can come along. And we're going to do one big show with Martin and myself in Melbourne. We just thought it was a really good way to say hi to the Aussie fans, to kick off the Grand Prix week in style, and to have some good chat. Because, I don't know about you, but, I'm pretty lucky to be living the dream here and living my dream job. And the prospect of standing on stage for a couple of hours and we'll have some polls, some interactive questioning with the audience. We'll tell a few stories about life on the road. Martin will tell a few stories about travelling upside down in a Formula One car. We'll have the Ask Crofty second half, and we'll try and we'll get some people up on stage as well to have a go at being an F1 commentator, which is, it has to be said, one of my favourite parts of this, because everyone thinks our job is easy, and then we'll put someone up on stage and say, right, you go ahead and do it. And they quickly find that after 15 seconds, they run out of things to say. But we quite often get a nugget and a gem of a human being up on stage showing us just how it should be done. And it's good practice for Martin and myself. But mainly, we're living the dream. We love talking F1. So let's go and talk F1 with some F1 fans. I can't think of a better way to spend a Tuesday evening. Maybe that should be the catch line. There's no better way to spend a Tuesday evening.
Well, indeed, there's no better way to spend a Tuesday evening than watch Channel 31 and In Pit Lane. But the only thing that would come close would be to go see David Croft and Martin Brundle at the plenary at Melbourne Convention Centre. And as I said, the extended interview with David Croft will be on In Pit Lane on April the 5th at 9 o'clock. And be watching. He says a lot of very interesting things. In particular, he goes back and talks about the situation that we finished the Grand Prix season with last year, and some of the comments he made. surprised me actually in terms of how he thinks that that's all been handled and how that's all been seen. The other thing that surprised me, guys, was he was genuinely. I don't think it was sort of. Not sure it was during the interview or actually afterwards, because as you heard David say then when he was saying the 15 minutes, we were supposed to have about 5 minutes. We'd got to the 15-minute mark, as you heard there. That wasn't even halfway through. So,
did it break? That was a break-up interview, or did it break up on your footage then?
That was probably no. That I didn't know that shouldn't have broken. I didn't get any break up here.
Through broken up then, all broken up. That's It was stutter rap.
Oh, okay. That's it was fine at this end, so I'm not sure what
came through fine for me. Maybe take your foot off the Ethernet cable on the ground there, Doc.
Yeah.
Let all the data flow through.
There's a kink in the hose. A kink in the hose somewhere.
Must be all this radioactive cordial I'm drinking at the moment as well then too. I keep going back to the fridge for. Actually, had a few questions for Croft, and I thought we was going to be on tonight, so I want to ask him a few things so I could sit up on stage with you two guys, especially Stilly and Brett. And one was obviously back in 2019. He's now done 250 calls on Sky Sports since 2012 Grand Prix. So that's so he's pretty comfortable in the chair as well. And he also has put his voice to I think it's a movie coming up or has already come out called, and he's it's a planes concept, and he's called Lofty Crofty. And I wouldn't mind knowing a little bit more behind that, because that's very vague, and he needs to explain that to the world on how that came about and why he's still doing that. And I think the other one was, when he first started out, many moons ago. I won't give away his age. I'd like to ask him is, for the first 3 years he was doing hospital radio, and me having a radio background, I can understand. And why was he doing it in a hospital for 3 years? So that's
funny. That's funny.
Captive audience.
And that's funny.
They're dying to listen to him.
It's okay to put the audience to sleep in a hospital, just not forever.
I just got one, and you have to add two more. But anyway, I just they're breaking.
That's interesting because hospital radio is very, very big in England, and John Hindhaugh for the
John Hindhaugh as well. Yes.
Yeah, he got his
now to the West Midlands Hospital Radio, and here's Phil Collins. And if you leave me now, a little bit of that.
We change from the backgammon table over to the solitaire. It's riveting.
So that's where a lot of them do get their start. I suppose it's the equivalent of community radio here in Australia, in Melbourne. If you look through all the people who came through Triple R and who are now in mainstream radio, and the same I suppose with community television as well. So with 31, so. That's interesting. But yeah, have a look at it. But what really surprised me was, and I don't know, I might be wrong about this, but he was genuinely very, very surprised when I put forward my opinion that Lewis Hamilton is going to get a full-on Bay 13 Boxing Day reception when he comes out here. I don't think he's going to be welcomed with open arms necessarily.
He won't be lauded like he usually could be.
And Crofty was like genuinely surprised. It was like, really? I mean, why do you say it? So, what do you think? Is it just me, or do you think that he's going to really cop it when he gets to Melbourne?
The continent is divided on Lulu. Absolutely.
I think he'll get a bit of stick.
He'll get the Bronx cheer. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think he's going to cop it.
That's just a feel. You're right, Brett. I mean, you look at we all, the whole five of us at some stages through day in, day out, week in, week out, ever since last year, previous years, and since he's probably got some motorsport left in him for a while. The jury's out how long Lewis wants to go on for. He definitely wants that next championship. He might face some challenges and struggles this year to get it with the competition that's out there. Now that they've got a third team that are in the mix towards the end of the year in a possible, as Stilly said, there's different tracks. We're only basing it on one show already. But, yeah, Lewis has always been controversial. And, people have always liked and disliked him before he was even controversial. So he puts himself out in the public spectrum in a way that can be seen as arrogant sometimes, and as well as entertaining. And people will judge on what they see and also their actions. So, yeah, he doesn't always, media-wise, put the best foot forward to entertain. I mean, you look at some of the best ones in any motorsport or any entertainment in the world. You look at a Robbie Williams who's a singer, or you look at an Ash Barty who's just retired this week, or any form of entertainment that's in the public eye around the world. They are constantly being scrutinised, and if you do not portray yourself as down to earth, or you aren't down to earth, or you do not, don't respond to the public and give, and all the sorts of stuff. I think, Sebastian Vettel's turned it around a little bit in the last 12 months. We've all given him credit for that, for example, when it comes to Formula One, which is relevant to this evening. So I think, he's always been a controversial character and not necessarily said and done things that everyone agrees on. So therefore he opens himself up.
I think also it's got a bit to do with the fact that a lot of people didn't agree with having Michael Massey moved aside, and Michael Massey being Australian and being moved aside. A lot of people on websites and things didn't agree with it.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be one of the things that I said. And as I said, we did talk about that at length. As I said, I was quite surprised that the take from David on that whole situation, I thought was really interesting, because it's not necessarily what I expected, having read particularly a lot of the English media in particular. I was really surprised, and you'll be able to see that. As I said, we talked about a whole range of things in Formula One over the course of the time. I've just got to find a way now of cutting it all together and getting it to fit. Speaking of people that I spoke to last week, I had a big week of speaking to people. I was down at Phillip Island on Saturday, where I had a similar situation. I had sort of 5 minutes with Stephane Ratel.
You got in.
I got in. I saw you there, but I also saw Stephane Ratel, and got quite a long interview with him as well. I'm going to put that up on the YouTube channel because there's a lot to talk about. And we're not going to have time to sort of give it it justice.
He's got so much on his plate right now, doesn't he? The number of pies that man and his organisation has fingers in, takes up more than two hands. When you consider the international championships and series, the regional championships and series, the national championships and series, runs the homologation for an entire category of car. And it's now obviously interfacing with the ACO about promoting, GT in the Asian hemisphere. It's, the turnaround for, GT racing since, the mid-2000s. A large portion of that success can be attributed to Stephane and the people that work in his organisation. So, I think the simple fact that he came out to, regional, very, very, wouldn't so much say backwater, but shall we say one of the less high-end GT championships with which his organisation is associated, to come out for essentially the first round and to see how planning is underway for the Intercontinental GT Championship, GT Challenge, to continue at Bathurst in a few weeks' time, I think speaks volumes to what he thinks of the importance of GT in this region. So.
Yeah, I think that the interesting thing was, because I sort of opened up on the wrong foot in a way, because I said to him, it's Sebring this weekend, and you're here. Why? And he just went no. He said, why would I want to be at Sebring? This is the place. This is the place I want to be. And he was. This is my championship. So
why would I want to be? Why would I want to be in the backwoods of Florida on a bumpy old airfield circuit in the middle of nowhere when I could be at the gateway to hypothermia? Sorry, lovely Phillip Island.
With high UV as well too, Stilly. High UV.
We've now had 2 weekends of nearly perfect weather at Phillip Island. Can they make it 3 in a row for Payark's 70th next weekend? I'm sure Warren Reid and everyone at Payark is fingers crossed for that.
Brett and I are still sunburnt from down there.
Yeah, I have to say that apart from the weather, but it was funny because I did point out that because he said to me that it wasn't his first visit to Phillip Island. In fact, he said to me that he had been here well over 12 years ago because he was actually looking at Phillip Island at the time as a potential venue for the GT1 World Championship that they used to run. And he was, and as he said, my memories of it were it was nowhere near as nice as it is today. So yes, the things he remembered about Phillip Island, the main thing was the weather.
Maybe the fog's lifted since. Anyway.
Yeah, but it was the other interesting thing was you can see his mind is on the go because I spoke to him about the fact that they're running GT3 now in the North American Sports Car Championship in IMSA. It's going to run in the World Endurance Championship. It's going to run at the Le Mans 24 Hour, and he's already thinking ahead because, as he said, it's a double-edged sword. It's both good and bad. I mean, because as he said, now we have Le Mans. He said, and manufacturers are going to want to win Le Mans. He said, and they are going to want to build cars where money is no object. And he said, it's wonderful to see all these fabulous new cars that are being planned and all these stories about new manufacturers getting involved. He said, but for what we do around the world, having these fabulous new cars is great. But if they're $1.5–2 million to buy them, not so good. And that's what he was saying. He said, that's why, he said, I'm now putting in a lot of time and effort and a lot of energy into not GT4, and we spoke about that as well, but GT2. He thinks that GT2 is going to be the next step, he said, because that's going to be closer to a road-going supercar than what's happened to GT3. So, but yeah, well, I'll put that up online. But we had, once again, I had a good half hour or so with Stephane, and we spoke about all of those things, and it was really fascinating.
So he warmed up to you after your initial foot in mouth. Why would you want to be in Australia?
But the great and the good were all down there. So there, and Barry Naismith, who was down there, was saying it was about seeing sort of huddled together Eugene Arocca, Roland Dane, Stephane Ratel, Tony Quinn, Barry Rogers. Everybody who was sort of anybody was down there on the weekend on Saturday, and they were all talking to each other.
Kurt Suzuki even was
well,
down
there
there
you go.
wearing a Motorsport Australia shirt. Yeah.
Good. Just a good segue just before you do, Stilly, what you just said, Brett. I happened to catch a little paragraph today. You were talking about Barry Rogers. S5000s have just announced today that they will have a full 17-car grid at the Grand Prix in a few weeks' time.
Well, if you remember, he actually said that on the show 2 weeks ago. He said there would be a full grid. They still haven't
17.
announced 2 drivers at this stage.
I'm fingers crossed that TBA will finally get to make an appearance at the Grand Prix. He's like, he or she has appeared on the entry list so many times. And just come race day, they just never seem to get out there.
He has a brother too. It's TBA 2 and TBA 1. So yeah.
And of course their cousin TBC.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, as long as TBC doesn't have a DNF, we're going to be okay.
We're going to be okay.
I was a bit worried about what the C stood for, but anyway, we'll leave that one there.
But yeah, so that's it. As Paul van der Akker is joining us again, saying that, yes, the second round of the State Series is at Winton this weekend. Coverage on Blendline TV.
That's where I'll be.
400 million people will be watching it on the weekend. It will be bigger than Jesus, the coverage is.
11 million.
11 million at least, and a bit.
Hopefully we'll run
the
loud exhaust.
Yeah, they did last time they ran there. So yes,
they're the Bathurst spec exhaust.
Well, I was going to say,
like extractors, pipes, nothing.
But I don't think there's any restrictions on the noise pollution over at Albert Park because the F1s will be screaming harder than anyone else. So if they can...
not nowadays, though. I think the S5000s, I think, are going to give them a run for their money if they run.
Well, it'll be open slather anyway, so basically they'll say go your hardest, you would think anyway too. Because with a sellout crowd for both Saturday and Sunday now, they will want to entertain the plus.
It just goes to show that category will work when it's put in front of the right audience, and it gives the people that want to turn up and run in that category, gives them the exposure that they want. That's where we've seen the success of something like the Toyota Racing Series in New Zealand, where it runs in the European off-season. It's not interfering with any other championship. It's a standalone, and it's high profile, and it's recognised as being part of the development step on the European single-seater ladder. Chris Lambden, who's obviously a friend of the show, has long said that, part of the goal of this is not just to develop great cars, it's also to, potentially shift Australia's relationship with open wheel racing. We saw the success of the Tasman Series, 50, 60 years ago. It's in the European off-season. It's not interfering with other events. I think the Australian Grand Prix could make a fantastic finale to an off-season S5000 championship, which is what the organisers have been talking about. It's just finding that balance between, events running in summer. I think after the success of something like the ARG's Race Tasmania, if we had the second iteration of this year, that's got the backing of the Tasmanian government. 3 or 4 high-profile events. Like imagine running it at the Adelaide 500 in December, the Newcastle 500 in February or March, Tasmania in January. Have an event at Phillip Island and finish at the Grand Prix. 5 or 6 meetings over in 4 months in the European off season, and then you do the S5000, then you go across and do Formula Renault Euro Series or International Formula 3.
Yeah, I think the thing was that I spoke with Chris on Saturday as well, and he was saying, really, like so many things, he said, the whole COVID thing really just hit at the wrong time. He said everything was, sort of gathering momentum, and then suddenly it was just, it was, like the coyote and the anvil sort of falling from on high, sort of crushing, because it really just did shut everything down straight away, particularly in New Zealand. And he said they're really at the point now where they've got to sort of reassociate with New Zealand and figure out where New Zealand fits in the calendar, how many rounds they're going to have in New Zealand. Will there be enough interest there to actually do it like that? But it's interesting you mentioned the Adelaide 500. Certainly, the talking is going on already about having S5000 and a round of the a round of the Tasman Series this year at basically to start off at Bathurst, and then also run at the Challenge and Bathurst, and then go on to the Bathurst International, and then move on to the Adelaide 500 and beyond that. So. Yeah, let's hope that takes off, because they're spectacular cars. They looked and sounded, they're a very small field, but they still looked and sounded wonderful down there. Incidentally, coming up just down at Phillip Island, I was only down there for the Saturday, and because we weren't allowed to shoot anything, and because my second camera died. If anybody's wondering what we're shooting down at Phillip Island on the weekend, we ain't shooting nothing, because I've killed both of our cameras in the last 2 weeks we've been there. So I'm not going to make.
I've got an iPhone you can borrow.
Yeah, I've got an iPhone too.
Well, I was going to say we do our live streams from iPhone from Sandown, and that works. But anyway.
But the situation that down there with Formula 4. This week we've got on the program Jordan Sinney, who won the first round at Sandown. The Formula Ford race on Saturday, and we talked about this with Jordan when we recorded the other night. The Formula Ford race on Saturday was insane, and I believe the rest. Well, Dave, you probably saw them. I didn't see Sunday, but boy, has that come back with a
I spent the entire weekend in the safety car. So anything beyond sort of about halfway up the window of a TCR car, anything below that, I can't see. So I can see I can see the aerials of Trans Am cars go past. I can see some of the roofs of the sports sedans. But Formula Fords and S5000s, I can hear them go past the safety car, but I can't see them. I did get to run at the front of the field a couple of times in the Hyundai i30N safety car as part of the Shannon's Motorsport Australia Championships. So thank you to all the volunteer Motorsport Australia officials that made that event happen. Round 2 of the ARG Speed Series on Stan. But yeah, the most I got to see of the cars was playing Stan on my iPhone in the safety car, because that's all I could see, because the pit lane wall at Phillip Island is quite high. So I had the radio in the car tuned in to 87.6 Island FM, had the dulcet tones of the commentators in the cabin, and then I had the video on about 30 or 40 second delay on the mobile phone, so we could figure out what we got scrambled in front of for.
At least you got some good Wi-Fi and you can watch it on Stan while you're sitting in the car right next to it. Anyway,
yeah, no, great 4G coverage. So.
Yeah.
I think Chris is riveted by.
I was about to say, I'm just about to give him
are you with us, Chris?
Richie,
Earth to Chris.
He's reading Chris is reading best bets there for his.
Okay, we don't have to call 000. Oh, thank God.
Yeah, thank you. We got what we got.
I haven't dropped dead yet.
We got very worried there under the circumstances, Chris.
Well, you're just checking out the form guide for what's running in the first couple of races at Flemington tomorrow. I thought you were studying there for a second. Very good. A bit of breaking news.
Question for you, Doc.
Yes, MCM. I am watching the baggers. So, just on a side note, I don't think I'll be doing Full Course Yellow from here next week. Carlton will be hopefully playing on the Thursday night, and I'll just do it live from the MCG or Marvel Stadium, and I'll just, you can just watch all the riff-raff around me, whoever we're playing at the time, and I'll do Full Course Yellow from the game. So I've been a bit quiet, but thanks, Mad. The baggers, I think I changed my tips 5 or 6 times this week because... Anyway, getting off the subject, bit of late breaking news that Brett probably hasn't had a chance to put along the bottom of the scrolling news is that Hulkenberg is expected to replace Vettel again for this week because Sebastian hasn't had any time back with the team at all, so he's probably doing some rat tests.
He hasn't returned a negative test.
He has yet, but he hasn't returned a negative test yet. So Nico is probably going to get another run. Another one as well, though, to a note that was I mentioned Fernando Alonso earlier, and that he said he's always very appreciative of the people that are around him in the world. Doesn't matter whether it's the kid running up for an autograph or the civil engineer back at the warehouse doing all their work for him. He says that he really appreciates the guys behind the team. They're doing a lot of work behind the scenes to get some success for the Alpine team as well, though, too. Just also on success, which is not going so well at the moment, but it's good to see Jack Miller had a little bit on the weekend. MotoGP had their second race of the year, and it's a bit of a mixed-up, mash-up season so far, which is great for the fans. We're going to watch it from any particular circuit. So Jack only got third, unfortunately. Miguel Oliveira on his KTM, congratulations. He's got one out of the bag. Quartararo was great off the start, got the whole shot, got swallowed up in the first lap or two, but managed to crawl his way back about halfway through the race, including passing Jack and Johan Sarko on a satellite Ducati, got third place. Interesting note with Jack, which is relevant to us here in Australia and following his progress, because he's had a few ear bashes already this year saying he needs to perform if he wants to get the Guernsey next year, is that he was pulling low 40s on the time, 1 minute 40s, and that's as far as the bike could go in the wet. So where Jack's usually can push the bike as hard as he possibly can to stay out in front of it, because he was leading the race for a few laps there after, I think it was the second lap, he made his way up to first place. Miguel actually caught him, though, within a couple of more laps. But he just said, I got to low 140s and the bike had nothing else. So he said he wasn't quite getting the grip in the rear tyre that he usually gets in the wet, and he also was sliding a little bit more than usual. So he puts that down to the bike setup, and he realised, well, if I pushed any harder, I was going to bin it. So he said, I just got the best possible scenario case out of it for himself and Ducatis to race again the next day and obviously not cause himself any injury to himself or the bike. So that's really about it. So
what about the situation with Marquez? I mean, not just one crash which has put him out, but he's had a number of crashes now. He's had a number of concussions. He's like Will Pekowski.
He had 4 in Indonesia, didn't he?
Four over the weekend before the big one, which put him out and he's still got double vision and is. As his doctors are saying, it's one of those things that could actually clear. Like he could wake up tomorrow morning and the vision is fine. But he's had a lot of big accidents, and perhaps it's time to, is it time for him to have a look at a change of career?
Advice. Yeah, well, look, I hate to go retrospective, but it could be related. So, the start of last year, Marc Marquez was supposed to be to come back to MotoGP. The problem is the way the other two the fill-in drivers, including his brother, was riding one of them as well, though, too. They were having absolutely nothing. They're getting nothing out of the bike for Repsol Hondas because they changed the bike that much back at the start of last year that no one could ride it other than Marc. So they were trying all these different setups until they actually started getting some sort of consensual feel from the 2 replacement riders for the year for Repsol Honda and Marc Marquez. And obviously Espargaro as well was on it as well too. So he started to find his feet a little bit more as the season went on last year, and this year he's starting to hit his straps a bit more and making top 5s and even podiums from time to time. So they've managed to change the bike around to get it so that everyone can ride it again. With Mark's problem is he's come back after, there's all things it's not like a Formula One car like Kevin Magnussen has jumped in it or Hulkenberg to a certain extent. The car's still there. It's a lot. Yes, you do have your neck and all the G-forces and stuff like that, but riding a bike is a lot more physical than driving a car. Doing both quite regularly, I do. Drive cars, I ride bikes, I ride jet skis, I do all that sort of stuff. So it's a lot more physical on a bike. And he struggled at times last year, and he said so, admitted himself, I need to get bike fit. I need to get in touch with the bike again. And he's, the expectation he puts on himself, and of course, what he wants to do is he's pushing himself really, really hard. And when you're pushing yourself that hard, you're bound to keep coming off all the time. And you've got airbags throughout you, you've got all the protection, the leathers and stuff like that. But you do it so many times, you're going to get injured. So carrying the injuries he got with his shoulder and his elbow and the plates and the screws and all that sort of stuff, there's also different ways you'd crash as well too. So he's probably trying to protect himself and roll differently and crash differently as well too. So, yeah, he is...
You think he'd be good at that by now? He's had plenty of practice.
Exactly, Brett. But so he's pushing it so hard all the time. It's pretty obvious. He's trying to get to back. The expectation himself is trying to get back to the levels of where he is because, he is a many, many, many years world champion. So he might be just pushing a little bit too hard, too fast. And the other thing is the bikes are evolving year on year. They're not the same bike quite constantly. So, yeah, I don't think give it away, but maybe he's just got to take stock to a certain extent and maybe treat it like a rookie and just finish a few races and just push it out to the point where it is where you're not going to slide around and tank slap yourself every second lap.
Well, hopefully he doesn't try and come back too early yet again, because he certainly did last time around. And hopefully, obviously the best, they've got the best doctors around, the best doctors in the world are there. And just speaking of bike riders and seeing what you're wearing, Doc, I was just thinking, is Valentino Rossi coming to Bathurst? The new Paul Newman's coming to Bathurst?
I don't know that. You'll have to explain. I haven't seen that late break. I usually get some scoops myself.
We had 25 years or more of Paul Newman to drive at Bathurst. Paul Newman to drive at Bathurst. Every year it would come up. It was as regular as a Christmas carol.
He's going to bring his sauce along.
Yeah, and now it's Rossi to race at Bathurst? ? So. I'm just wondering whether we will see him at Bathurst at some stage. Speaking of Bathurst,
if he was to come to Bathurst or Phillip, I reckon he's just a bigger chance of coming to Phillip Island as Bathurst because he loves Australia, loves Phillip Island. They said he'll be at least from 4 to 6 races this year, MotoGP, in appearances, because he has got his obviously second and third tier teams in his VR46 Valentino Rossi team, the races. So he's a big chance. Not necessarily. I think we probably need to see Valentino in a car as consistent as what they say he will, competing in the GT championships overseas, which he hasn't fulfilled yet. So I reckon you're going to get appearances, but maybe not driving a car. It wouldn't surprise me because later on in the year is when October, when we have the MotoGP, it's going to be back to normal this year for Phillip Island. Things will have settled down a little bit. He's obviously got the wife and the bubs at home as well too. He may have completed a few car races by then, and what a perfect opportunity to come and even bring the family out on a holiday to Australia. Come over.
He's not going to be the only one either, because I see Danny Pedrosa is also doing some four-wheel racing as well. So either the two of them might either get together or end up racing each other. That'll be interesting. Speaking of Bathurst, just quickly, when we had Barry Rogers on the program last week, he mentioned the car they were building up, the Mustang they were building up for Marcus Ambrose and George Madecki. 70 cars, an entry of 70 cars for the Bathurst 6-hour race. Yeah. Surely they can't fit them all on, but it is sort of, it seems to have the potential of becoming our sort of Nürburgring 24 hours. That's a fabulous turnout of cars.
Absolutely
brilliant. The limitation, of course, is just pit lane room. So obviously, when the circuit buildings were completely rebuilt, was that around 2005, 2006? It's got 36 massive garages. One of those is normally allocated to the TV production crew. So you'll probably see 35 full-size pit lane garages with 2 cars per garage. It's just making enough space for all the fuel rigs and all of the team equipment. But considering that the Nürburgring, 24-hour manages to squeeze, over 200 cars into a Formula One pit lane with about 40 garages. They tend to go from 5 or 6 cars to a garage. I think, to have to share, 2 cars to a garage at Bathurst, luxury.
Get along.
Yeah.
Yep, it's too bad.
It's a really good rebound for that event. Obviously, it was scrubbed in 2020. It was kind of a will it happen, won't it happen in 2021, and it did happen. Admittedly, a little bit muted because, of course, border closures was still a thing. To see production car racing's had a rough trot the last few years. Having that event certainly is the pinnacle for production-based, sort of home-built, tuner garage-built race cars in this country. If we can maybe parlay a 70-car grid into kind of regular 20 to 30-car grids at a national level production car series, I'd say that production car racing would be relatively healthy in Australia. But it'll be interesting to see how that one works out. Again, great coverage in store on Stan Sport again as part of the Easter Speed Series coverage. So looking forward to that one.
Yeah, unfortunately, we get we'll have no free-to-air coverage live of this year, which is yet again a shame. And certainly, once again, I certainly can't justify spending money on Stan Sport because apart from the
friend. Shh.
Yeah, I don't know any friends who can do it there. Anybody wants to share Stan Sport with me? No, I'm not that. I've got enough on my hands at the moment. But we will get out at some stage. Barry did invite us round to the workshop to have a look at that car as it was being put together, and also we'll
see if you can find the third pedal that's missing out of the pedal box.
And Barry did mention that they'll be having a hit out up at Winton as well too, so George can come down and Dad as well too have a bush basher, a paddock basher around Winton as well too. So keep an eye out if you are around in Winton Way or you're heading that direction. You might just land on the day when you'll have a must pony running around left, right, and centre.
And it's good to see Marcus getting back behind the wheel of something again too. So
he was quite a busy boy at Phillip Island on the weekend, wearing the GRM shirt, basically making his way between effectively every garage in pit lane, between the GRM cars in TCR, the GRM cars in Trans Am, and the GRM cars in S5000. So Marcus, a little bit like Stephane Ratel, a man of many hats at the moment.
Well, not just that. It's a bit like a politician at the moment. It is election season, so he had to probably catch up with a lot of people he hasn't caught up with before and press the flesh.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The Gary Rogers Motorsport, as we said with Barry, they've got fingers in all sorts of pies, and when you consider, I mean, they're still doing all of this out of what is a relatively small workshop here in Dandenong, just up the road from me, about 10 minutes walk up the road from me at the moment, and you go past that place regularly, and you think, how do they fit all of those cars?
Hang on, Barry did say on the show to us though that they've got stuff stashed away in containers and left back to workshop that they've forgotten they've got there. So that's what they did. He said
that's how they built the Monaro again.
That's what I was about to say. The Monaro chassis was sitting at the back there, and it was there. Just no one had given it any thought for a while. Oh, yeah, it's COVID. Let's do something. Let's get a Monaro. We put a Monaro there. Why don't we do something with the Monaro? We've got it there.
I also like the fact that he said that he did say on the show that they did build the what was billed as the last ever Holden, and there will be another last ever Holden coming later in the year. So
is this the John Farnham edition?
Yes,
yep.
Yes, I think. I think so.
Whispering Barry, it was called.
Okay, so I didn't see there. I believe the Australians caught up with the Sandown rezoning attempt. Clearly, it will be Daniel Andrews' fault. I'll
have to hit the breaking news. That'll be have a look.
Anyway, listen, that's about all the time we've got there. Remember to be watching In Pit Lane this Tuesday night at 8 o'clock on Channel 31, where our special guest, as I said, is Jordan Sinney. Once again, another highly articulate, very professional young driver from the Formula Ford ranks, talking about his time in both Formula Ford and prior to that in karts and XL, and he joins us as well. Plus, of course, all the news from this weekend, and also some live music from AL. AL joined us on very, very late notice and was fabulous. So we will see you
thank
there.
You, Anna.
Yes, thank you, Anna.
Maybe we should make that our motto. See you next Tuesday or see you next Thursday.
See you next Thursday, yes.
There you go. Yeah, that'll work.
Is that distant cousin to TBC?
Yes.
Okay, and yes, the Australian the 360 sprint car title at Murray Bridge. So
that'll be a good one.
That'll be.
Mind go on the border for that. That'd be fun.
That'll be fun. I don't know whether there's a stream of that available. It's
Thanks,
hard. Someone
it'll
said,
probably be on Clay-per-view.
And
yes.
Just a retrospective. Thanks, Magcal, for the update on the baggers. Thank you. 12 points. It was worth losing a tip for the Carlton to get up there. I will be broadcasting live next week on Thursday night for Full Course Yellow from Marvel Stadium, Level 2, of course, where there is no Red Rooster anymore. So, Gil McLaughlin, you need to get McDonald's or something back there, I'm told. Anyway.
Okay,
I'll be eating really, really fast food. Full course
and on that note, we will say thanks for joining us, everybody who joined us once again. Remember, we're here every Thursday night at 9 o'clock. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, why suffer alone? And we'll see you next week on the program. But from all of us here on the panel, and from our special guest David Croft, remember April the 5th on In Pit Lane, we'll have that full interview with David Croft. And keep watching the In Pit Lane YouTube channel, because we'll have the full interview with Stephane Ratel going up in the next couple of days as well. But from all of us here on Full Course Yellow and In Pit Lane, thanks for joining us, and bye for now.
Have a great week.
Love you all. Bye.